Take a moment right now and slow your breathing. Let your body settle for a little while. Put aside everything that is pulling your attention outward and gently bring your focus back to yourself. Notice what you are feeling underneath all the noise of your thoughts. There may be something you have been sensing for some time now that is not easy to explain in simple words. There can be a sudden tight feeling in the chest that appears without warning. Sometimes a memory of a certain person comes into your mind very suddenly, even when you are not thinking about them. There may also be a restless feeling under the surface of your normal day, like an inner pressure that is quiet but still present. This feeling is not random. It is something your inner awareness notices before your thinking mind can understand it. It feels like something is shifting in your emotional space, even if nothing in the outside world has clearly changed yet. Your inner world often reacts first, long before anything becomes visible. The deeper part of you works quietly and constantly. It notices emotional changes, attachment patterns, and shifts in connection without needing words or proof. This is why certain people can suddenly come to your mind without explanation. It is also why silence can sometimes feel very loud when emotions are involved. That soft pressure you may feel in your chest at times is often connected to emotional attachment that has not fully settled. It can feel like a pull towards someone, even when there is distance or lack of contact. The mind may try to ignore it or explain it away, but the feeling still shows up underneath everything else. Before anything changes in the outside situation between two people, there is often a phase where emotions feel heavier inside. It can feel like quiet tension building up, even without clear communication. Nothing is visible yet, but something inside starts to shift and reorganize itself. You may have noticed small emotional signs that feel like openings after a long period of silence. Things that once felt completely closed can begin to feel less fixed. Thoughts about the other person may appear more often again, sometimes unexpectedly, even during normal daily routines. This does not always mean immediate action or visible change. It often begins internally first. Feelings, memories, and awareness rise again after being pushed down or ignored for some time. Emotional distance on the outside does not always match what is happening inside a person. The connection you felt with someone does not simply disappear just because time has passed or communication has slowed down. When a connection has reached a deep emotional level, it tends to stay in memory and feeling for a long time, even if it is not expressed. While you were moving through your own life, dealing with uncertainty and emotional questions, something was also shifting on the other side. The other person may have been going through their own private process that was not visible to you. On the surface, they may have seemed distant or focused on other things. From the outside, they might have appeared calm, busy, or emotionally moved on. They may have been acting in a way that suggested detachment or control. But outward behavior does not always show the full truth of what someone feels internally. Often people create emotional distance, not because they feel nothing, but because what they feel is too strong or too confusing to handle easily. Stepping back can sometimes be a way of trying to manage emotions that feel overwhelming or uncertain. In many cases, a person may also build inner walls to protect themselves. These walls are not always conscious decisions. They can form from fear, past experiences, pride, or the need to feel emotionally safe. Once these walls are in place, they can change how a person behaves outwardly. Even if someone seems distant, part of them may still be observing quietly from a distance. They may still notice small reminders of the connection they stepped away from. They may not express it, but that does not mean they are not aware of it internally. Over time, keeping up this emotional distance can become tiring. Holding back feelings takes effort, especially when the emotions are still active underneath. A person can start to feel a quiet internal conflict between what they show and what they actually feel. There can be a kind of internal split. One part of them tries to stay logical and controlled, telling themselves that distance is the correct choice. Another part continues to hold emotional memory and attachment, even if it is not expressed. This inner tension does not always disappear quickly. Instead, it can build slowly in the background. The more a person tries to suppress certain feelings, the more those feelings can continue to return in quiet ways, such as thoughts, memories, or emotional reactions they do not expect. Sometimes people distract themselves with routines, work, or social activity. From the outside, they may look fine and stable, but distraction does not always erase emotional attachment. It only covers it temporarily. In quiet moments, when there is no distraction, thoughts can return more clearly. Memories of conversations, shared moments, or emotional experiences can come back without invitation. These moments often carry more emotional weight over time, not less. What once seemed small or ordinary can start to feel more meaningful later. A simple interaction, a certain tone of voice, or a feeling of comfort that was once taken for granted can become something the mind returns to again and again. As time continues, emotional resistance can begin to weaken. What was once pushed away does not always stay away permanently. Feelings can return in waves, especially when they were never fully resolved or understood. There can also be a growing awareness that the connection was not as simple as it once seemed. It may start to feel like it reached a deeper place inside than other experiences. This realization often comes slowly, not all at once. When a person begins to see a connection as meaningful on a deeper level, it becomes harder for them to fully ignore it. Even if they try to move forward mentally, emotionally, they may still feel pulled back towards certain memories or thoughts. There may be moments when they remember things they thought they had moved past. These memories can feel more emotionally charged than before, not because the past has changed, but because their perception of it has changed. Over time, emotional understanding often becomes more honest. A person may begin to recognize that what they felt was not temporary or superficial, but something that affected them more deeply than they originally admitted to themselves. At the same time, something may also begin to shift within you. Even if you still think about this person, your emotional state may not feel the same as before. There is often a quiet change that happens after repeated uncertainty and waiting. You may start to feel more grounded in yourself. Instead of constantly reaching outward for clarity or response, you may begin to turn your attention inward more often. This does not mean you stop caring. It means your focus starts to include your own emotional well-being again. There can be a slow realization that your energy and attention have value. You may notice that always focusing on someone else's response or behavior creates emotional imbalance over time. This awareness often builds gradually through experience. As this understanding grows, your emotional dependence on external reactions begins to weaken. You start to notice your own feelings more clearly, without immediately linking them to what the other person is doing or not doing. This shift is important because it changes the emotional pattern between you and the other person. When your attention is always directed outward, your inner world can feel unstable. When you begin to bring that attention back to yourself, your emotional center becomes stronger. Over time, this creates a different kind of balance. You are no longer emotionally stretched in one direction all the time. Instead, your energy becomes more contained within yourself, more steady and self-aware. The connection itself does not necessarily disappear, but your relationship to it changes. It no longer defines your emotional state in the same way. You begin to observe it rather than be completely controlled by it. This is where real internal change often happens, not through sudden events, but through gradual shifts in awareness, focus, and emotional response. What once felt overwhelming can start to feel more distant and clearer at the same time. And in that space, both people involved may begin to experience the connection differently, not because something external forced it, but because internal understanding on both sides is slowly changing how it is held in the mind and heart. When that inner energy slowly turns inward and becomes calm, its absence starts to feel very noticeable. That is what this person is experiencing right now. They are beginning to feel your emotional distance in a new and clearer way because the space you used to fill no longer carries the same urgency, attention, or emotional reaching toward them. Instead of weakening the connection, this change has forced them to face what has actually been missing. There is a growing awareness inside them that cannot be ignored as easily as before. This is also why they have been feeling more unsettled and restless. A part of them senses that you are no longer standing still emotionally. The version of you that once waited, tried, adjusted, and gave more of yourself away is no longer the same. That shift creates pressure inside them because time now feels different. It feels like something is no longer guaranteed to remain available forever. People often fail to understand value while it is still freely available to them. Only after distance grows and access becomes uncertain do they begin to feel the real weight of what they had. This person is now sitting with the emotional impact of every delay, every hesitation, and every moment where fear influenced their actions more than honesty did. For the first time, there is less space for avoidance inside them. Sometimes separation does not weaken a connection. Instead, it removes distractions and makes everything clearer. Distance has a way of revealing emotional patterns that were easier to ignore before. It shows where fear has been controlling decisions and where emotional needs were left unspoken. It also exposes how each person behaves when they are no longer emotionally supported in the same way as before. This time apart has changed both sides, but in different directions. It has helped you return to yourself and recognize your own worth without needing constant confirmation from them. At the same time, it has forced them to experience life without the emotional presence they had become used to. That is why what is happening internally now feels so intense for them. Things that were once pushed away or delayed are now coming back into awareness. They are starting to understand that what they miss is not just attention or routine contact. They miss your emotional presence, your depth, and the way you naturally understood things without needing long explanations. They miss the feeling of being emotionally seen in a way that felt easy and real. This realization is no longer small or temporary. It has started to settle into something consistent that shows up throughout their day. It is no longer limited to occasional thoughts. It is becoming part of their ongoing inner experience. There are moments when they are simply living their normal routine and something suddenly brings you into their mind with strong clarity. It could be something small like a sound, a place, a phrase, or even a moment of silence. These triggers feel ordinary, but the emotional response they create is not. At first, these moments may have felt uncomfortable for them because they believed they should be in control of their thoughts. They wanted to decide when they think about you and when they do not. But emotional connection does not follow strict control. It appears naturally when something still holds meaning inside. They are now reaching a stage where resisting these thoughts takes more effort than simply allowing them. The internal resistance is starting to feel heavier than the emotions themselves. The protective walls they built around themselves are no longer feeling like safety. They are starting to feel like separation from something important. This shift has pushed them into deeper reflection. They are now looking back at the past with a different level of awareness. They remember moments when you showed understanding, even when they were distant. They recall patience from you that they did not fully recognize at the time. Those memories are no longer neutral. They now carry emotional weight because they can see them from a new perspective. What once felt ordinary now feels rare in comparison to what they have experienced since. Real emotional connection often feels simple when it is present every day. It is only when it is no longer there that its true value becomes clear. This person is now beginning to recognize that what you offered them had depth, stability, and emotional honesty that is not easy to find again. They have tried to find similar feelings elsewhere in small ways, but it has not created the same sense of connection. Instead, it has made the contrast more obvious. That contrast keeps bringing their attention back to you, even when they try not to think about it. There are moments when they attempt to emotionally disconnect completely, but instead of feeling free, they feel an even stronger sense of absence. Each attempt to remove the emotional bond ends up making it more noticeable inside them. This creates a cycle that is hard for them to escape. This happens because the connection was not superficial for them. Something inside them recognized emotional depth in a way they did not fully understand at the time. That kind of recognition does not disappear simply because someone tries to ignore it. At the same time, your own emotional state has also changed. Even if you still think about them, you are no longer in the same emotional position you once were. There is more stability in you now, more internal balance, and less emotional dependence on their actions. This change has made your energy feel different to them. They are noticing that you are no longer emotionally reaching out in the same way. You are not waiting in the same place emotionally. You are not reacting as strongly as before. This shift creates a strong effect inside them. When your emotional urgency decreases, it leaves them alone with their own feelings without the buffer of your previous emotional presence. This makes everything they feel more noticeable to them. Your calmness becomes something they cannot ignore. It removes the emotional distraction they were used to and replaces it with clarity. That clarity forces them to sit with their feelings instead of avoiding them. Their thoughts keep returning to this connection repeatedly. Even when they try to focus elsewhere, there is a pull that brings their attention back. This is not something they are fully controlling. It is something they are experiencing internally. They are beginning to understand that this connection is not something casual or temporary in their emotional system. It has affected how they understand closeness and emotional safety. That realization creates both clarity and discomfort at the same time. Because once someone fully understands that a connection matters deeply, they also have to face what that means for their choices. It becomes harder to justify distance, avoidance, or silence in the same way as before. Emotional truth starts to feel heavier than emotional protection. Fear has played a major role in their behavior until now. Fear of vulnerability, fear of emotional risk, and fear of losing control have shaped many of their decisions. But fear does not remain strong forever when it is constantly challenged by emotional truth. Slowly, that fear is starting to lose some of its power. Not all at once, but gradually, through repeated internal pressure. The emotional reality inside them is becoming stronger than the reasons they used to stay distant. The silence between you is no longer neutral for them. It feels active and present in their awareness. It feels filled with meaning rather than emptiness. Every day of distance adds more emotional weight rather than reducing it. Each attempt they make to suppress their feelings creates more internal pressure instead of relief. This is why their emotional state has become more intense recently. Something inside them is no longer staying quiet in the same way it used to. There is a growing internal conflict inside them. One part of them still wants to stay protected, avoid risk, and keep emotional distance. Another part is becoming more honest about what they feel and what they miss. They imagine different scenarios in their mind. They think about reaching out. They think about what would happen if they did. They also think about whether too much time has already passed. These thoughts repeat more often now. There are moments when they come very close to acting on those thoughts. The emotional pressure rises to a point where silence feels almost broken, but fear still interrupts the process at the last moment and holds them back. Even so, that fear is weakening. It is no longer as solid as it once was. Emotional truth is slowly becoming stronger than the habits that kept them distant. This creates a slow but steady shift inside them. Deep down, they already recognize something they did not want to fully accept before. No one has made them feel the same emotional depth that you did. No one else created that same sense of understanding and emotional recognition. That awareness changes how they see everything that happened between you. It changes what they prioritize in their thoughts. It changes what feels important and what feels replaceable. And slowly, it reduces their ability to fully ignore the connection. At the same time, you are no longer in the same emotional position either. You are not stretching yourself in the same way. You are not depending on their response to feel stable. You are not emotionally chasing clarity from them as before. This creates a new kind of balance. Even if the connection still exists in memory and feeling, the emotional dynamic between you has changed. You are no longer fully centered on them. You are also centered on yourself. That shift is important because it changes how both sides experience the connection. When one person becomes more grounded and less dependent, the emotional structure between them naturally adjusts. The intensity changes shape. Now the connection is no longer only about waiting or uncertainty. It becomes something that both people are aware of in a different way. It is not as one-sided as before. It becomes something that exists in awareness rather than constant emotional pursuit. This is where internal change becomes more visible, not through dramatic action, but through gradual shifts in attention, awareness, and emotional response. What once felt confusing begins to feel more defined inside. And in that space, both sides are no longer the same versions of themselves they were at the beginning. Something has already changed in how they feel, how they reflect, and how they understand what this connection means.